All right, man, let's get into it. So $1.2 million of profit.
Yep.
What the hell? Vicente, walk us through this, man. Who are you? What do you do? Talk to us about 1.2 million.
Yeah, I mean, 2 words: new development, man. I think that's a real deal. If you get out there in the luxury development space, which is really what I'm coming off of. So I did a luxury single family home in Scottsdale, Arizona. Cool pad, just over 3,500 square feet, which honestly in the area is not all that big. I mean, there's homes that are upwards of 5,000, 9,000, 10,000 feet. Some of these homes are going for $20 million plus, and so there's huge volume in that space. But yeah, I set out, towards the end of 23, I was like, I want to buy a house, right? I was like, I need to buy a house. At some point I have to buy a house. And I was like, what if I just built a house and I have some options at the end of it? And so that's kind of the path that I set on. And I was like, all right, I'm going to find some dirt and try to see if I could build something. But, my background has always been in commercial construction. So, I work in commercial construction for the past 12 years. It gives me a lot of confidence around the building process. I've taken a lot of stuff from raw dirt to develop property. And so I always knew that was kind of an option out there. But as home prices have skyrocketed and there's just so many mediocre flips out there, and when you're kind of looking at the market and you see what they're charging for a very okay flip, I'm like, man, I got to build something. And so, yeah, initially I was like, I'm going to build a home for myself and maybe live in it and kind of give myself an option when I got to the end of it. And so I, started the process, and I was fortunate as a kid. My dad's actually an architect and he was the architect of this project. So cool to work with my dad and get to actually, do a project together. But as a kid, we built a house that I grew up in. And so I was around that 13, 14-year-old age where I really had a lot of aha moments in like the building process, and it got me into construction. It kind of like shaped the rest of my life, right? And so I was like, all right, I want to do something. I have some cash to be able to, pull off one of these developments. So let's do it. And then if it works out, cool, I'm going to sell it and make, some great money. Or worst case, I'm going to live in it, because what you can build and afford is a lot better than going out on the market and trying to buy something brand new. So I was like, this is a cost-effective way to go about it. So yeah, I just started down the path, man, and found some nice dirt in Scottsdale, North Scottsdale area, just beautiful area. Had some nice mountain views in a great area, great school district. I was like, all right, this is the one. Let's go for it. And it at the time it was a big risk for me because I had just enough money. It wasn't even all there when I started the project, so I knew I had to find a path to really pull together enough cash to pull off the project, because it's there's a lot of money involved on these development deals. But I found the dirt, got into design. My dad didn't just knocked it out of the park. I think I shot you the listing for it, and just cool kind of desert modern-y vibe. And so, and it really begins with that first step, finding the dirt, making sure that dirt works out, doing your due diligence on this land to make sure that you're buying a piece of dirt that's buildable. Because believe it or not, a lot of lots out there on the market are just not buildable. There's a lot of challenges with the infrastructure, drainage, easements. There's a lot of things out there that feel very technical, but once you get started on it and you meet with your city or your municipality and you engage them and get them on your side and say, hey, I'm looking at these 3 or 4 different lots. Give me feedback on them. I want to build this thing. I don't want to lose my butt on it. If I go buy this lot, not able to build on it, help me find the gaps in this. And they do, man. The city will tell you, hey, this isn't a good deal or this is a good deal. Well, you could build something. We'll find a way to help you get that. And getting the city bought into that development process out of the gate is huge. And then what I can say from there is design, just knowing your vision. I knew I wanted something modern, something kind of desert that had some warmth to it, but really modern. So floor to ceiling glass, like that was my vibe. So having a direction there on what that space is that you want to create and kind of build your brand around, like we were talking earlier, it's really art, right? And if you get into that luxury space, especially, you have some money to play with to kind of do some cool stuff.
So what did you put in? And then, so the profit was 1.2 and you put in like 300?
Yeah, so I think I ended up putting in $329,000. That was the total amount of cash that I came out of pocket for it. And that was basically the land. I actually got a lot loan on it, which a lot of the times the bank, once you actually go get to construction loan, they want you to be fully paid off on your lot.
Yeah, so you normally buy the land cash.
Yeah, normally buy the land in cash. If you can get a lot loan. You can get like 50% terms on it. So you have to come up with 50% of the cash. They'll give you a loan for 50%. But before you actually start construction, once you're actually at that permitting stage, you can get your construction loan, right? And this is pretty much the same thing as getting a mortgage for a house, right? They're going to look at you do if you're going the typical bank way, or you can go private money, which is a lot easier, a lot less red tape. But they're going to even actually appraise the house based on your plans. So they're going to say, hey, I want to go build this. I'm going to give an appraiser these documents, your specs, show me your fixtures, everything that goes into this project. And I'm going to give you a value for this property before you even go build it. And so I think right out of the gate, we got an appraisal. I got an appraisal for $2.5 million, right? And my total cost was right around 1.6. And so we're like, all right, cool. This is a good deal. The bank is in. You have a lot of contingency in that number when you already have an appraisal for something not even built, and you're like, you have confidence going to the deal. Ultimately, we ended up selling it for $3 million because appraisers don't know what they're doing. I mean, they just have no idea. But so, you go in there with a lot of confidence, you get some financing, and you can really get yourself on a path to start building this thing quickly. Because the biggest risk is in the build, like we were talking about. If you can't get this thing done within 6 to 8 months, which is what I like to do. We did the construction in 6.5. I was the general contractor. You'll just bleed out on holding costs.
Yeah. So here's what I want to do really quickly, because there's a few different stages of investing, right? Or a few different stages of knowledge. So you have like unconscious incompetence, where it's like you don't realize how bad you are.
Yeah.
And then it's conscious incompetence, where you're like, okay, I'm bad. And then it goes to, conscious competence. You're like, okay, I'm starting to get good at this thing. I've got it. And then you get to unconscious competence, which is I'm really, really good at something, and I'm so good at it that I don't know how to explain it. So you just said a lot of stuff there, and where it's just, okay, cool. I buy the dirt. I just did $1.6 million new build with permits, and then I put it on the market and I sold it, and I made $1.2 million in profit. And right now everyone's, okay, that's great. Now, what the hell does any of that mean? And how do I do that in my life? Because it's really cool, because you solve rich people problems.
Yep.
And so I want to kind of like take us back and then break us down step by step, section by section, so that somebody that is unfamiliar with new development can come into this and say, okay, I know enough to be dangerous and take a step into getting into new dev, because I'm in real estate and I'm in business, and I don't even understand half of this stuff. Like, I don't know how any of this works. So I'm actually a good person to be running the interview right now for the listener and for the watcher. So first off, I want to talk about something just to go all the way back, which is, your shit. And I always say that everybody has the same amount of time. 10 years is 10 years. And so it depends what you do with that time is what completely alters reality. So it's like, what level of skill set do you want to build? Do you want to build a level 1 skill set, or do you want to build a level 100 skill set? And so kind of walk us through like what skill sets you decided to develop, because like this is a huge problem, like commercial real estate, construction. Part of it was like luck of the draw, because it's what your family was in. But can you talk about the importance of what skill sets to work on for a decade?
Yeah. I mean, if you're serious about getting into development, you got to learn how to build. You got to know how to build. Whether you're actually going to be the builder or just managing a builder, you got to know what you're building. So for me, I got into commercial construction right out of college, did construction management, did a degree in structural engineering, hated engineering. I was like, all right, I'm going to build for sure. I'm going to be a builder. I went and worked for a commercial general contractor, and I just learned how to go about the process. And, a lot of it is just leadership at its finest. You're a leader of men and women out there to get over 100, 200 different bodies onto a project to go do their couple of things that they have to do. And you're kind of like the zookeeper of the process. Yeah. You're making sure all the animals are taken care of. Everyone's doing what they have to do out there to actually get to a completion, your driving schedule, your driving budget. So if you're serious about development, learn construction, learn the building process, build those relationships with the trade partners, the subcontractors in that community, the suppliers, the vendors. So then you have a really good grip of what's the reality going into it.
Talk us through, like right now, you have over a decade's worth of experience in new building and construction and housing. Walk us through where America's at today. And some people are calling for a real estate crash or a correction. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
It's the crystal ball is always a broken thing, right? But I think for sure we're undersupplied. I think there's a lot of national headlines out there that'll say it's undersupplied. And, whether that's true or not, I think there's a lot to be said about your local market too. You know what I mean? I know I'm out of Arizona. Scottsdale is our focus, and our supply has ticked up a good bit, right? But the reality is the inventory that's also out there isn't always quality inventory, right? And so when you have a market that has some inventory, debatably not even enough, and the majority of it isn't even good inventory, you still have a problem. You know what I mean? And so I think if you could get out to the market with a great offering, something a little bit better than everything else that you're seeing in your comparable projects, you're gonna be really successful, man. And I think the project that I just got off of that we just did is proof to that, because we sold it even before we went live on the market. We had a couple off-market showings and someone took our number full ask. So there's a big demand out there in debatably some of the most challenging real estate times in the last 2 years that we've seen. And if you can deliver a great product at a right price and do it quickly, you're going to be successful,
Can you explain to somebody that's watching this or listening to this right now, since everybody is aware that we have a housing shortage and everyone's aware that we have builders, what's the disconnect between the two to where we aren't able to build the stuff that we aren't able to build the houses that we need? Why is that?
There's a lot of red tape in municipalities. So, and that's the thing, I mentioned getting with your city and your municipality. It's a daunting process. I'm not going to lie. Like a lot of people, especially going through the first time, having to get a design pulled together, get into the city, you have to do certain easements. There's a lot of things that going in to getting build ready plans on a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things. I think a lot of municipalities are trying to pull back some of the red tape. We've seen it with the ADU laws. They're trying to figure out a way to help supplement a lot of the development and needs for housing in different communities. But if you have some experience doing that, or people have done that, and you get the city on your side, they're going to help you be successful and actually get building some stuff. But there's limited land, and the areas that there is some land, there's just a lot of red tape. So it's a little bit between having some of the municipalities pull back the red tape, actually incentivize some of these developers, whether it's like tax credits or what have you, to want to go into that space and get some projects done.
Talk to us about ADUs. Why is this one of the single greatest things that somebody that owns a single family home can do to increase cash flow?
Man, ADUs are awesome. For a number of reasons. I own some properties in Tempe, which is right around the university. They recently passed an ADU law. The thing is, a lot of the areas where people want to be living is in, Center City, right? You got that metro area, but it's all developed, right? So you're either going in, you're doing a tear down, or if you have an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit is what they call it, right? You can go in and actually provide some additional housing on your existing parcel, right? Which is awesome, because you could bring in another two, 3 bedrooms, get more people actually living on that property. And it increases your actual property value by a lot, because you're obviously doing some pretty big improvements, doing like essentially a second house. But it also just brings more housing solutions to areas where people want to be, right? Not everyone wants to be 40, 50, 60 minutes outside of the city, especially if you're younger without a family. And so having the ADUs come in is just going to afford a lot of opportunity to some of these hard to reach areas to get it more accessible for people to live in.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think the puck is going? Let me think about how I want to phrase this. So you have 2 different problems to solve. You have the luxury problem, to where you have budget market, you have the middle market, and you have the premium market, right? Mm-hmm. And then the budget market is always going to be that's going to be like Section 8 government subsidized housing. Then you have the middle market, the middle class, that's getting really, really squeezed today. And now they aren't able to afford a new home. And then you have the premium market, which is always going to be a market that's there regardless. It's a static market. Mm-hmm. So as somebody that's coming in from an investment perspective, what is the more advantageous market to pursue? The middle market, to where we're trying to do a lot of build to rent multifamily property so that people can have more affordable housing to live in, like the middle class,
right? Or
the luxury, to where you're maybe doing what you did, where you did the single family home and it's a multi-million-dollar home, like the ones that we just saw that went up in Malibu and stuff.
Yeah.
Which one is if you were starting today, which one would you pursue from an investment perspective?
From an investment perspective, it's luxury, 100%. I think in luxury, the reality is, and I've talked to a couple guys in the Action Academy about it too, it takes the same amount of time, right? So it's the same headache to get into the city, get a permit, get a development done, get it built and on the market. It's nearly the same amount of work, right? So, and when you go in on some of these lower income, even the median area of these homes, your margins are lower, right? So if the market were to dip 20% and you don't have 20% in your numbers to be able to really take on a market dip, you're underwater, right? In the luxury space, your building costs are relatively fixed, right? And you can do some unique features to these things, but there's a lot of margin in there, right? If you get into a project that has 7 figures and a potential profit in it, market dips 30%, you might only make $100K, but you still made money on your deal, right? And so for me, I think for the same headache, for the same nearly amount of time, it's luxury all the way, man. And the buyer pool is better. I mean, the buyer pool has the money to do it, even in those rough markets, debatably more in the down markets, because they want to get out there and get a good deal, and they're savvy people, right? They got to where they are not because they were kind of clueless in their approach. So I think the luxury market, you have a lot better chance of getting an all cash offer, even when they're $3, $4, $5 million homes. And you just have more contingency in these deals to be able to weather some of the rockier markets.
Mm-hmm. So this is a multi-million-dollar question. So if it takes the same amount of work and effort and time to do a small deal versus a big deal, the reason that people aren't doing the big deal is risk.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of losing money. So how can somebody go from small to big fast while mitigating some of that risk?
Yeah.
What is some advice that you can give?
I mean, the best way I would suggest, if you've never done any building, it's okay to go smaller, right? That's an okay approach, but as quick as you can get to that luxury, bigger space, do it. And some of the ways that you can mitigate it is you can bring on some partners, right? So if you need to have another partner to split some of the cash up front, that's a great solution itself. The other one that I always tell people, which some people kind of hate, is be the builder. You're going to learn a lot more. I have a friend out of Florida, Lou. He's actually an Action Academy as well.
Yeah, it's one of those.
And he hadn't built a lot prior to it, his first build, and he just actually sold it this past week, but he was a builder on it, right? And you learn a lot. And I'll tell you what, these builders take 20% of construction costs, man. And so right out of the gate, if you have a little bit of experience in building, or you feel like you can navigate it, or you have some people in your corner, you can partner with someone that has building experience, you save that upfront cost. Again, just building that buffer to get to your break-even line, staying as far away from that break-even line or going in the red as possible when you're underwriting these deals, and just going for it. I think at some point you're going to learn a lot. You're going to have a lot more hustle in your own deal than anyone's going to take interest in, and you're going to make it a success if it's important to you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think it's interesting because my job on this podcast is to take your oven. So I talk about the difference between the 95% and the 5%. 95% of multimillionaires that I interview and billionaires that I interview are just dumb enough to believe in themselves, and they're consistent as hell. You're the 5% where your oven just burns hotter. So I've got to, it's harder for me because I got to take your brain and I got to dissect it to the audience here.
Yeah.
Which is it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's why, we're friends with Abernathy, he's the same way. His oven just burns hotter.
Yeah.
And you just know a lot of stuff, man. So it's really interesting. It's like a chess match for me.
Yeah.
It's a good time. So the pattern that I recognize that I want to pull out from what you said and from what a lot of guests say is the pattern of how do I go big without going broke, right? And then it's multi-million-dollar problem to solve. And over and over and over again, I'm curious about your perspective on this. I found the solution to be that you go to the person that is already big, like you, and you say, hey, I want to find a way to add value to you on this deal. You come in and you maybe get a small cut, a 5% cut, a 10% cut. This applies to multifamily, storage, hospitality, land, anything. You go to the big guy or big girl, and then you say, hey, I want to add value in this very niche specific way. Take 10%, ride with them through a deal cycle. And then you learn as you're going through them, almost like an apprenticeship, like a mentorship that's actually tactically skin in the game. Then the next project, you just cut your learning curve by 10 years because you're working alongside them and you recognize the patterns and the skill sets and the actions that they did. And now you can go and more logically GP the next one with now relationships that you built in the trenches, knowledge that you built in the trenches. And now you can say, look at what I just did. And that's where your confidence comes from. Would you agree with that? And if so, as somebody that is very obviously the person that other people would come to partner with on a development to get your knowledge.
Yeah.
What value would they offer you for in your perfect world to be okay, cool.
Yeah.
You're worth partnering with.
Man, I agree 100%. I think getting in and finding a mentor that has some experience in it, because there's needs, like you wouldn't believe on construction projects. Even if it's just getting boots on the ground, I'll give you a perfect example. One of my best friends of over 15 years now is actually working with me in that exact fashion, right? And I give him a little profit split on some of the projects that we do, but he was 100% green, had nothing to do with construction. But his biggest value add for me is just getting boots and eyes on the ground, man. Actually getting out, walking a project. I give him a couple connections with some of the trade partners, and he starts coordinating them a little bit. We do some FaceTimes, times, but man, the time that it saves for me to have someone go out to those projects and just walk them for me is so helpful, man. Because there's only one of me, and I can only be in one place at one time. But just before this, I was doing a FaceTime on one of our projects that we're doing, and he's out there showing me it, and at the same time, he's getting a lot of knowledge out of it, right? Mm-hmm. He's thinking about what I'm thinking about. And each project that we worked on, he just gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. He's putting some coin in his pocket. He has virtually no risk, but his big goal is to be able to do one of these projects for himself, right? And because that's really where everyone wants to get to at some point. So finding a mentor that has some experience in the space, talking to them, understanding what their needs are, and being able to cater to them, and nearly doing it for free or for maybe a little bit of fee is an exceptional way, man. You'll learn fast, especially if they see, that's the one thing for me when working with them. I was like, I'm not gonna beg you to come out to these projects. If you want to do it, show up. If you don't, totally cool. We'll still be best friends. And man, he's ran with it, and it's kudos to him for doing that. But there's a lot of hungry people out there that and mentors out there that want to have those relationships, and it's a huge way to get into it.
Service is the Trojan horse to knowledge.
I like that.
Yeah, service is the Trojan horse to knowledge. So so there's two different ways to approach this, right? So what you just said is amazing, and it's good to validate it, because I like having patterns and validating patterns and seeing if there's any chinks in the armor. So there's two ways to go about this for somebody that's listening. They can DM you and say, Vicente, Brian, can I pick your brain?
Yeah.
Can I take you to coffee? And to which 99.97% of those are not going to get a response. What is the proper way for somebody to approach this?
I think what I like to see is someone that comes in with a little bit of a problem statement. You know what I mean? Is like, hey, I'm working on this. I've taken these couple steps, and I'm getting hung up here, here, and here. Because sometimes when you can actually get just the process of actually getting your problem statement in a written format helps you start to clarify it, but it at least gives me an indicator that someone's really thought through it to a pretty high degree, to where maybe I have a nugget of input or experience that I could share with them to help them kind of facilitate that a little adjustment to get them on the right track to continue the process that they're trying to get through. So that's the biggest one for me, is showing a little bit of thought going into your problem statement before sharing it is a big deal, man. And just hustle. Like, it's, hungry people when you see them, hustle when you see it. You've been that person, you know what I mean? Having that flame in you that can't get put out is, it's hard to turn a blind eye to that.
Yeah, I had this gentleman DM me about business buying. Mm-hmm. And so normally somebody will DM me and say, oh my God, love your content. Can, we grab coffee, or can I pick your brain? And I'm going to ignore that. But this guy DM me and he goes, hey man, just followed you, started listening to the podcast. I'm looking at this business, it's 4.1 million top line, 1 million in EBITDA. Would you be willing to partner on this? I'm looking at this. I'm trying to figure out how to take this down bite-sized steps. I was like, yo, okay. And so I responded to him. I was like, hey, so have you gotten accepted LOI? Have you talked to the broker? Have you gone through the term sheet?
Yeah.
What have you done so far? And then it prompted a conversation. I was interested because I looked at the business and I said, whoa, okay. This is actually legitimate business. Like, this is something that I would probably buy, but do you have any understanding of this? Mm-hmm. And he's no. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, okay, you have my attention. Let's start talking.
Yeah.
What's your background? What do you bring into this deal? And then we started a conversation.
Yeah.
And I was happy to have the conversation. And I have this idea, and I'm curious how this has played out in your life, which is the quality of mentor is directly determined by the quality of problem that you're trying to solve. So if you want this massive millionaire mentor, you need to be bringing them $1 million problem. You can't give a millionaire mentor a $2 problem, because they're going to be bored with it. So for instance, if I went to my millionaire mentors that I originally made and I said, I want to buy a house a year, that's boring to them.
Right.
I said, I want to quit my job and travel the world in 3 years. And they're like, okay. And so right now it's like, you have to make a goal that's so big that other A players in the best top talent are excited to help you accomplish it. So right now it's, hey, I want to grow Action Academy to 17.5 million in top line, with a 40% EBITDA margin, or a 30% EBITDA margin, or a 50% EBITDA margin. Nobody cares. But if I say I want to help 1 million people become financially free by the time I'm 40 throughout this decade, other people are on board. I'm curious how this has played out in your life.
100%, man. I mean, everyone wants to work on fun problems to solve. You know what I mean? At some point, as you kind of hit some levels in your development, and certainly I'm not at the pinnacle of where I want to be, but you want to work on new stuff, right? You want to be challenged in new ways. And I think if you can bring a problem to someone that may or may not have the experience, but might just have an interest in trying to solve it with you, it's an incredible way to open up a door, man. And you're going to have a relationship with them potentially for years to come if you can actually work with them on a solution for that they're excited about. So I agree. I resonate with that 1,000%. There's a lot of young people in the construction and building industry that want to make moves quickly. And when you kind of have them in the right spot with the right amount of tenacity behind them, I mean, they're like limitless, bro. You can wind them up and run at whatever you want to point them at. And I think, just being there to support them, give them a little bit of guidance. It's incredible to see where they'll go, but it begins with just trying to be a good, mentee-mentor relationship. And I've had that both ways in my life. I work with someone out of Scottsdale that does a lot of large multifamily because that's where I want to get to, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll come in with problem statements on my own, and he'll just totally shoot answers at me quickly because he's already been in those situations. But he has a fun time learning about what I'm thinking about too, and learning how can I actually help this younger person get to where they want to be. So it's a beautiful cycle at the end of the day.
Yeah, if somebody's in their 20s or just getting started in their journey, from this conversation, I would say that there's two key pieces of advice, which would be number one, be very hyper aware of what skill sets that you're going to spend the next decade building.
Yeah.
Because just choosing a better skill set will change the trajectory of your life. And then number two is choosing what problem to solve.
Yeah.
Choosing what problem to solve. If you choose the skill set, so like you're saying, like commercial grade development, all this stuff, and then you're trying to do this luxury market, how to hit this demand, dude. If you take you, same person, same intelligence, same upbringing, same resources, same everything,
yeah,
and we just had you focused on a different skill set in a smaller problem, it'd be a night and day difference. It wouldn't even be it'd be an ocean in between.
Yeah.
So I want to take a quick pivot really quickly. So you're a new development construction, and you had this statement before we began the show, which is kind of a word of caution to house flipping. Yeah. So why is house flipping not the best move for 2025? What do you recommend instead?
Man, I think so. House flipping, I've done a lot of it. I currently do some of them, as a builder side, but I just think that the meat on the bone is so skinny on some of these projects, man. And I think the underwriting is so variable, and you're oftentimes just building off of an existing structure or an existing site neighborhood that has its challenges, man. And the deal flow and flipping to me is not there. But as a developer, and you can build a brand around your products and the builds that you're putting out there, which is something I'm trying to do, you get known for that in the market, right? And so your product, once you get it out there, people, hopefully you get to a point where they're waiting on it. They're following you. They're tracking what type of stuff that you're working on. And that's just hard to do with flipping because you're dealing with some of these existing homes, and all of them are kind of variable to what some of those preconditions are, but also just the numbers are skinny, man. Even in the luxury flipping market, you might make six figures, but you might lose six figures very quickly, right? Although the time in the market's faster to get in and out of a flip, I agree. I just think your returns and your end results are much more predictable in development space, and you control as much of those factors as possible to make it a success. I talked about the market dipping 30%. Underwrite that in your pro forma. Are you going to make money? Are you going to live to see another day? Because if you don't, is that a risk worth taking, right? That's a huge drop in the market, but it's possible, right? It's in theory, it could happen. Where in flipping, the market shifts under you 5-10%, or you get into in Arizona, it's hot in the summer and you hit it in the summer, and thing could be sitting for 90 days, 120 days, and you're upside down on it really quick. And so to me, I think if you're serious about it for a long-term play, it's development, and a lot of people, I think, turn a blind eye to it. I think there's a lot of scary, and risk things that go into development just because people don't know it. It's a little bit of a black box. And from what I can tell, that's why we push so hard on the development pod and the Action Academy is let's get more people around this. Because I think long-term wise, the real wealth is built in development. And it's not just luxury single family, it gets into multifamily, gets into self-storage, all the asset classes. But if you really want to start crushing it, it's going to be development.
I don't disagree with you. When I go to Singapore and I'm up in the Marina Bay Sands, what I did was I was just up in that giant infinity pool, and I was looking out at all the skyscrapers, and each one of them had a name on it, and there's just thousands of them. And I say, well, dude, like somebody has to build these. And a lot of these skyscrapers, especially in Dubai, like when you go to Dubai, it's all the builders.
Yeah.
It's Damar. It's like, I forgot the name of the company, but it's every single one of the skyscrapers is like Dubai builders. and it's management companies.
Yep.
And it's crazy. And it's every single building. And so I think you're completely right. Development is a skill worth building. Like
Absolutely.
1000%, kind of pun and no pun intended. So if somebody's listening to this right now and they say, damn it, I'm sold. Okay, Vicente, like I've got some rental properties, or I want to buy a small business, or I've got some experience at some short-term rentals and I maybe renovated a short-term rental or something. But damn it, I want to go do my first luxury development project.
Yeah.
Like, where do they get started, and kind of walk us through a sequential path here?
Yeah. I mean, where you get started is, happy to reach out to me. I'd be happy to spend time with you and actually sharing some information, some of my experience. But again, it's looking at your market. Figure out a market that actually makes sense, right?
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
When you say make sense, what makes a market make sense, and what does a market make a market not make sense?
Right. So what makes sense is your building costs versus your resale costs. Knowing those numbers. So knowing what you could build for and knowing what you can sell it for, and understanding what's that delta between those two cost per square foot numbers, right? So if you can say, I can for sure, build this product for $500 a square foot, including land, and it's going to sell for $850 a square foot in my market, especially on that luxury side, you got to know that. You got to know what you're going to build for, right? So that's really one, is actually talking to the builders in your market. Get out to a couple general contractors, see what they're building for. Just call them, hey, I want to do 3,000 feet. I want to do some sort of 2-story structure in this area. What are you guys building for a foot? Easy way to go about that is just talking to your builders. Okay,
so that was a good answer right there, because for us, verifying what it's going to sell for the resale, people are familiar with that process. Get your comps, like talk to your realtors, look at what's listing on Zillow and everything, and you can kind of get a feel for it. So walk us through more of that process. I mean, even something as stupid simple as this. Yeah. This is what people could take away.
Yeah.
So verifying the comps and verifying the building costs. So you're calling up the GCs. So what's this process look like? Just to verify, because I feel this is the area where people are going to mess up.
Some of the gray. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is actually just getting out and walking construction sites. So when I see a house that is getting built, has fence up, I'll just park my truck and just walk straight into the site and find the superintendent, whoever's running the job, shake his hand, tell him that, hey, I'm new in this process, or I want to do a development. I had a couple questions for you if you have it. And dude, people love to share their information, their knowledge, especially in the construction industry. It's tight knit. So talk to them and let them know what you want to do. I've got, a lot of resources in that space that I've gotten just from walking those projects and literally physically putting boots on the ground and saying, hey, I want to do a build. Give me some feedback around XYZ. So that's a great way to go in and actually get a range of some of your building costs. And then it's understanding the land, looking your market and saying, hey, what dirt is currently available? I know that I can resell it for $800 a foot. I know I could build it for about, $400 a foot. What's my land cost, right? And I typically like to stay somewhere around 20 to 30% of the actual resale value of the property. So say you're doing a $4 million build, I want to stay around 20%, 30% of $4 million on the lot costs that we're buying. So if you can go talk to some builders, build some relationships, find some land, see if it even starts to begin to pencil. And then it's about getting a designer on board, right? After you've acquired that land, get your designer, get the architecture in, go into the city, get your permits, and then you're off to the races on the build, right? You got to get the financing in place, whether you're going private or you're going through a typical bank route. Both are great options if you can get approved. Get the sucker built and get it on the market, and try to do it within 12 to 16, 18 months. And I think you're going to be hooked, because I know I was.
So walk us through a private money structure on this, because people may be familiar with something like around a house flip, or doing a multifamily syndication, which is like a GP/LP structure, and then you have an 8% pref, normally a 3 to 5 year hold with a 2x equity multiple at the end. So walk us through how you would structure a private deal.
Yeah. So a private deal, I mean, if we're going private money, they're going to take some points right off the bat, right? But what they look at is, what is your lot costs and what is your total construction costs, right? Because they're two different things. There's a cost for buying the lot, there's a cost for building it. And typically what they're going to require, at least if you're going private money route, is you to come up with about 25 to 30% of that total project cost, right? So your land plus your construction. From there, they'll charge a point, depends on your lenders out there, a point or two on that total. And then it's around 11 to 12% interest only costs on what you draw. So for instance, say it's a 6-month, 8-month build, you draw $100,000 every month, you're paying only interest on that first $100,000, then $200,000, then $300,000. So it stair steps up. But one of the most important things to think about, once you finish this bill, and you're fully drawn out, especially in this luxury space, and I always give this as a word of caution, is watch those holding costs. Because some of these projects, especially in the luxury market, can cost $15,000 to $20,000 a month just in your interest-only debt payments, right? While you're sitting on the market to get sold. So think about that in your underwriting for sure. But I mean, the private money is by far the fastest way to get in and out of these deals. And once you build a good relationship and you have a track record with them and they know that you're going to deliver on your developments, you get a lot of people lining up and you can start to negotiate some of those deals at the rates of the money, and it just gets a little bit easier.
Dude, like, this is genius. Like, as you're talking, like, literally I'm thinking of is, I don't want to learn any of this. I'm so serious. I'm so serious. Like,
It's too much.
I think it's a good point, like, to make on the podcast, where it's just, it comes, like, you're a perfect example of who, not how. As you're talking, all I'm thinking of is, dude, I'll just partner with this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that I speak with where I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I could take what you're saying and I could put it in my bank of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And I could do something with that. And then sometimes you just meet like specialists in the field where I'm like, dude, if I'm doing a hotel, like, I'm just going to call Vicente and see if he's going to be my guy that I'm partnering with on this. Seriously.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I mean, but that's how the game goes. Do you have any people like that for you?
You know, I've got, to me, it's some of the numbers guys. You know what I mean? There's certain people that I've partnered with that are just whizzes on actually pulling down comps and actually doing all the data, the assessment stuff. If it's coming to building, I got it. But all the other stuff, all the accounting, the financing, all that money side of stuff is really not my strength. Like, it's really the building side, it's the development side. And so, like, to your point, you know, finding those experts, partnering with them, using their strengths and building that synergy, man, I believe in 100%. And I'm going to continue to do that for the rest of my life because there's a lot of things I don't like doing, but oddly enough, this is one of the things I like.
Dude, it's funny because a question that I struggle with and that I have to chew on a lot for me, and I'm going to give myself my flowers right now, is, you know, what do I say yes and what do I say no to? Because in a world of infinite possibilities, which I have now, it's easy for me to go a million different directions. But this conversation reinforces my belief, which is that the work that I'm supposed to work on is Action Academy, because it becomes the lighthouse that attracts like guys like you and people that I partner with in business and people that I partner with in hospitality and all these different partnerships and relationships, building up the brand, building up the podcast, building up the community. Then that offers value to you guys, because we go back to a service is the Trojan horse, the knowledge. And so I'm able to give you this platform. And then this gives you eyeballs, deal flow, lead flow, capital flow, everything,
big time,
right?
Yep.
So it really just goes back to every single person figuring out what their lane is and then just driving down that highway at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like, seriously. So it's a cool reinforcement, man. So over the next 3 years, what's your vision? What's next? You just pocketed 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Man, I mean, I want to continue to do development. That's where my passion lies. Getting to do more developments is definitely what I want to get into. I've got a piece of land under contract right now that I've got a due diligence period on that I'm studying, thinking about going a little bit bigger, 5,000, 6,000 feet on that. But then just trying to figure out how to build cool shit. I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's my goal. You know, that's my mission, whether it's in luxury single family or making a jump to commercial space or hotel space.
So what is the difference? I mean, because here's my thing is, I hate all of this. Yeah. Like, I mean, honestly, not nothing against you, but so I have a vision. I'm the vision guy. So I've got a vision for buying like this beautiful, beautiful hotel, and I want to buy it freaking cash.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a massive renovation project, of course, and I don't want to do any of that. So if I were to call someone like you, what's the difference between what you're doing today and versus if you were to take on a hotel? Are there differences?
They're not that much different. You know what I mean? It's the same process. It's the same materials, whether it's going into a home or a hotel or commercial. Maybe you get out of the wood into steel structures, you know, or more concrete. But I mean, the process on paper is nearly identical, man. The same number of trades that you have to get out there, whether it's concrete, plumbing, electrical, it's all the same, man. And it's just getting in there and having organization around what you want to do and driving it home with conviction and really setting that tone for your project, I think, is the biggest thing thing because, especially in the construction and the building world, whether it's residential or commercial, people know when you're serious, right? And they're gonna feed off your energy. So if you have urgency, they're gonna have urgency. So I'd say whether you want to go to a hotel or a single family home, man, you do it with conviction, you drive it hard, you're gonna make it a success. And people want to rally behind it. You know what I mean? They want to do cool stuff. They want to put their name behind it. They want to take their families out there and walk them through it and show them what they built. So, set a vision, drive it with conviction, and put together a good team, man. You'll be successful in commercial space. I've done a lot of multifamily, a lot of commercial, retail, schools. It's all the same stuff, man. It's all the same building materials.
Man, yeah, we need to do something, man. We need to do something, man. Because we have that whole thing on our 5-year plan, which is the LATAM luxury.
Yeah.
So, me and you going down there swinging in Spanish and being able to develop. Dude, I think there's something here, man. So if somebody wants to partner with you, if somebody wants to learn from you, if somebody wants to follow along with what you're doing, where can they go? Where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram. I think that's probably the easiest platform for me. It's just at Teran Developments with an S. And so Teran's my last name, Teran Developments with an S. And just follow along. I post almost every day on just building construction content. So I'll talk about, if you scroll back enough, you can see from the day we broke ground to the day that we finished the home, every day posting about the building process. So
I think I roasted you into creating that account, didn't I?
I think you did. Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah. Because I'm serious. I think it literally was back in the day. I was like, dude, why aren't you posting about any of this?
Yeah.
I think you finally started.
Yeah, for sure. No, you did. And I got a lot of encouragement to do that. And just, it's a unique thing, man. A lot of people, once they see it day by day, they realize that maybe it looks complex in a big spectrum, but when you break down day by day, you're like, oh, it's simple. It's simple. Every day is simple. It's just not looking up, man. It's looking down and taking that next step. And pretty soon you got a house built, you got an apartment built, a hotel built, and it's amazing what you can accomplish. So follow along.
Boom, baby. So guys, go follow him on Instagram. Vicente, dude, awesome coming here, man. And now I'm just going to keep bullying you until you're in Croatia with me. So
let's go. Y'all week, baby.
Yeah, man. So this has been Vicente and Brian with the Action Academy podcast, signing off.